Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Paul, and our channel's called Leesha Land. I like to do PC and tech things. If anybody is in there, feel free to ask me questions at any time. If this is the first time that you are seeing us, go ahead and hit that follow button. It'll give you notifications on when we go live. I'm gonna be talking about some of my small PCs that I have here. Going to talk about some of the components that I have in it, my experience that I've had. I'm going to talk about some peripherals that I also have that I highly recommend. I guess the first one that I have highlighted here. So if you don't know, when you build tiny PCs, you can't use normal size motherboards. You actually need to use what's called an ITX motherboard or a micro ATX motherboard, depending on how small you're going to go. Now, these two PCs that I'm going to show are both going to be ITX cases. They're both very, very small. One of them does have capabilities of putting a graphics card in, and the other one does not. So one of the motherboards that I do have is the Gigabyte X570. I'm going to go ahead and show it here in a second. Let's do one of these. Look at that. It's only a little bit crooked. I'll do some zoom in. That seems better. Okay. So if we take this open here, just for reference, let's take a mouse. As you can see, this motherboard is significantly smaller than most motherboards. Now, you do lose some functionality when you go this small. However, if you know exactly what you need, a lot of the times those motherboards will have what you need. Actually, this is my other one. So let's get this bad boy. Okay. Come on in frame. There we go. Okay. So this one right here is the Gigabyte B550 I. So the little I at the end of it is for the ITX. And as you can see here, this is the size of the motherboard. It is also the same size if I put my mouse here. It's super tiny. Now, that being said, the thermals in this thing are super awesome. This brick right here is the heatsink for the NVMe. The NVMe almost never, ever gets hot in this case. I do have a stealth cooler right here. This is the Noctua Stealth. Hi, Jenny. Oh, thanks so much, Jenny. I'll tell Leesha. She's in the other room right now. I appreciate you coming and following us. Stick around because we do beauty stuff. We do home stuff as well. And if you are interested in computer stuff, that's my expertise. So yeah, this motherboard, it still has the capabilities of running a graphics card in it. Right down here is where you normally would plug your graphics card in. I have what's called a PCIe riser. It's actually just an extension cable, and it routes down here and it flips around to this side. And you can see it right here, and then the graphics card mounts in vertically. This is actually a triple slot right here, so you could fit one of the biggest graphics cards you want. Now let's get a little bit of a close-up of the I/O shield. I personally am a big fan of motherboards that have the built-in I/O shields instead of having like the little metal ones that you have to put in, and they almost always inevitably cut your fingers. These ones look super sleek. As you can tell, this one's really flush. I'm trying to get focus. It's wanting to be a pain. Come on. Let's see if I do this. Nope. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So this does have just your mic line out, line in for the sound card. It does have Wi-Fi, which was important to me. We run this out in the living room. We play most of our games up on the TV with this. It does have a 2.5 gigahertz Ethernet port. It's got USB 3.2 support here, and it does have a 3.2 USB-C right here. Now, it does have 4 extra USB 3.0 ports. It does have onboard, onboard display. So, like, let's say that you run a AMD APU. Obviously, you would plug in through there. So, in terms of my experience with this motherboard, the BIOS is really intuitive to use. I have a 5600X in here, and because this case is so small, Gigabyte actually has a function where you can underclock your AMD CPU, and that's actually a relatively new feature for AMD. Intel has been doing it for a long time. That being said, the fact that AMD can do it, it means that I can run my processor at the same speed but with less power. And with less power, it means less heat. And obviously, when it comes to small PCs, thermals is something that's going to be very important. Okay. Just plop it like that. Okay. So I have, here you are, the other motherboard that I was talking about, since we're talking about tiny PCs. This is essentially going to be Asus's model. This is the Asus Strix B550i. No, hold on. Where's the B560? This is a B560 because this is running Intel. Oh, okay. Well, we can talk about this. Okay. This processor right here is the Intel i5-10400. Now, the reason why we picked this processor is because it has decent onboard graphics for what we do with it. We treat this as an HT PC and also a streaming PC for the kitchen. It is relatively fast. It's a 6-core, 12-thread processor, so it does work out to be rather fast. If you wanted to play games on it, if you pair it up with a decent graphics card, it'll be able to tackle almost any games that you throw at it. I do have just the stock cooler on here. Thankfully, because this case here is beveled out a little bit, it actually just fits perfectly. Snug, yet perfect. Right over the edge here, as you can see. There we go. So, when we do that, it ends up being this small little case right here. And the same thing with this I/O. It's just got, it actually has 2 extra ports if you want to run 5.1 sound. It's got a Type-C, it's got Wi-Fi. Because there's no graphics card, we use the onboard HDMI and display port. So yeah. There we go. Like I said, if anybody has any questions or wants any recommendations, feel free to ask me any, and I'll do my best to help out in my experience that I've had. Okay. Now, this processor does go up to 4.3 gigahertz. Because it's got 6 cores and 12 threads, you can relatively easily stream on it and play video games. If you are going to higher resolutions, you might run into a little bit of hiccups there. Hi, Shotgunman. Yep, I'm talking about my mini ITX setups right now. I've got a 5600 here on a Gigabyte B55i, and then I've got a 10400 over here on a Strix B460, I believe. This one I use as an HTPC. This one is a full sandwich case, as you can see. So I do have a PCI riser to where a graphics card would normally be if there wasn't a massive shortage. Gotta love the massive shortage. Alright, let's see. I did want to talk about this power supply. Here it is right here. This was out of stock for a while, so it was a little bit hard to find. This right here is the Corsair. It's their small form factor power supply. As you can see, my hand, it's about as large as my hand, and I have pretty small hands. The one that I have is the 600 watt, but there's also a 750 as well. I do have the Platinum Edition. Obviously, besides being 80 plus Platinum rated, one of the biggest reasons why I like it is you can see here, every single cable is individually sleeved. And it's a nice like fabric type sleeve, but it makes this process of being able to cram everything in here amazing. I would highly recommend this if you're going to do a mini ITX build for a power supply, because this is the only version, I believe, that I've seen that has individually braided cables. It is modular, so you only need to put in what you're going to put into your computer. You can see those right here. Yeah, and I mean, I'm pretty stacked. I had a 3080 in here, so I have a lot of PCI cables that are running around on the other side because I had an EVGA, which means that I needed 3. Well, I guess technically 2, because I bunny hopper, daisy chain 1, and then 1 separate one. But if you look at this thing, it's relatively quiet. It's able to put out the power that it needs. And the fact that it's in such a small case, it doesn't get too hot. So it ends up working out very, very well. Okay. If anybody's out there, what kind of setups do you guys have? Nope. There you are. Hi. Okay, since we're talking about cases, this case here is a custom case. They're a little bit hard to get. However, this one right here is the Inwin Chopin case. This case is relatively cheap. It's relatively small. That being said, it has its own built-in 140 watt power supply. I believe here, I can double check. Yee, 150. So it's got its own little built-in 150 watt brick here. Obviously, because you're not hooking up any graphics cards, that is dedicated to the motherboard, whatever you've got plugged into it, and your processor. Because I don't have an unlocked version, this thing barely draws any power. I believe TDP is 95. So yeah. In terms of size, I would say, I mean, we've got my phone here. I have just a regular iPhone 12. It's 1.5 lengths of my phone. And then over here, it's just the width of my phone. So it's great to be able to tuck in wherever you need it to go. Let's see. We can talk about RAM. There's some differences in RAM depending on what you're looking for. In this case, where are you? There you are. In this case right here, I have the Corsair Vengeance LPX. Let's see if I can hit these tabs out. Hey, look at that. So with these, they are fairly standard. They don't have any fancy lights or anything like that. They do have a decent heatsink. I've been using these RAM modules specifically for about a year and a half now. These are the 3200 megahertz. I find that that is more than enough for what I need to do. The only time that I go up to 3600 is when I'm running AMD, because AMD has what's called Infinity Fabric, and 3600 seems to be the sweet spot for their architecture. So these are just 16 gigabits, gigabytes, sorry about that. And then you can see here that these are CAS 16 latency. So that being said, these work out to be quite useful. And they're pretty easy to put in. Honestly, PCs at the end of the day are just adult Legos. Look at that. Easy peasy. Like I said, there are some variations that you can do. 3600 is always going to be what I would prefer to put into AMD processors. 3600 is usually going to be faster in general. In real-world applications, it might not be something that you notice. However, because of the Zen 3 architecture, you do notice a little bit more, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about, I don't get to talk about this a lot. So this is my main monitor for my main PC. This was my 2020 purchase that I just went to the wall with. This is the LG 38GL950G. It's actually a 38-inch ultra-wide gaming monitor, and there's a couple perks to it on the reason why I picked this over a regular one. So most, like 99.9% of ultra-wide monitors are about 34 inches. And with 34 inches, you end up losing a little bit of vertical space, and it gives you kind of like a periscope effect. The 38-inch gives you that extra, it's only like maybe 2 inches, but it gives you that extra 2 inches of vertical space that ends up making it look really nice. It does, however, have a unique resolution. It's 3840 by 1600p, so it takes a little bit to run. I have a RTX 3080 that runs it, and I get somewhere between 100 to 125 FPS, depending on how new the game is. On older games, I easily hit 165. That being said, it is an IPS panel, which is hard to find with ultrawides as well. IPS panels have more color accuracy in them, so what that means is that you get to see true, accurate colors. Now, that does mean that the contrast ratio is not as good as, say, a VA panel. VA panels have much better contrast ratio, so you get to see that like dynamic range kind of blasting you with the brightness on different things. You definitely get deeper blacks with that. But for me, I believe that color accuracy takes the cake and just looks significantly better. It is a gaming monitor, so it does go all the way up to, I believe it's 175 hertz, maybe 165. However, I do lock mine at 120 because at 120 FPS I get HDR. HDR is pretty nice. It is subtle. It's only HDR 400 on here. There are newer models that do HDR 1000 brightness. What that means is that it's kind of like the level of brightness that HDR can do. Yeah. So with all of those put together, I'm running 120 hertz on 1600p with ultra wide with HDR wherever compatible with my games. And this thing has been flawless. I've had it for a little over a year now. It is G-Sync, not compatible, but full-blown G-Sync. It has a G-Sync module in it. I would say that that is the only downside that I have to that monitor, is that the G-Sync module inside has its own individual fan, and it's the loudest thing at my computer setup. You can just hear this tiny little brrrr. When I'm wearing my headphones, it's not that big of a deal, but if I'm walking around or I'm not working and my monitor's on, I can hear it, and it's a little bit silly. One of the last features that this monitor has that I really enjoy is it does have a color wheel circle in the back that reflects off of your wall. And you can plug it in through a old style USB. It's kind of like that waffle sandwich USB plug, and you plug that into your computer, and you can actually get the. It'll change colors based off of whatever you're watching or whatever games that you're playing. This thing is expensive, and I know it's expensive. However, I don't think that I would ever go back. I love having that extra aspect ratio and ultra wide, and I definitely love that extra vertical height that I get from this monitor. That being said, since we are talking about smaller PCs, I gotta link it whenever I can, especially because they are regularly in stock now and they are going on sale, is the AMD 5600X. Right now it's on sale for like $289.99. It's only like $10 off. I believe that they started at $299.99, but they had such a hard time finding them that people were, hiking up the prices. This processor is amazing. I was running full 4K, right around 62 FPS on Cyberpunk with this processor. This processor is amazing. If I'm only playing games, the fact that this thing is a 6-core, 12-thread processor is always nice. I've been a very big backer of AMD lately because they've been trying to lower their prices. They've been trying to steadily improve on their architecture, and they really did it with these 5000 series chips. This thing is able to do 4.6 gigahertz, so it is able to get out just a little bit more than the 10400, and like I said, it can handle anything that you throw at it. The fact that it's smaller and I have a stealth cooler on here and the fact that I can underclock it is incredible. But that being said, if anybody's looking for a gaming processor and a gaming setup, I immediately think of the 5600. This is kind of my go-to. Okay. All right. So, one more thing that I want to talk about is the mouse, the Razer Naga Trinity. This has been an amazing mouse that I've been using for the past, actually it says July 1st. So I have had this for a little over a year. I've been using the Naga mouses since 2014. The difference between the other Naga mouses and the Trinity is that there's a magnetic plate on the side of it. So originally what Nagas do is that they have 12 buttons set up kind of like a T9 flip phone, and they are either programmable to whatever you want them to be, or by default they are just the number keys. So they work amazing for MMOs. I've used it for Final Fantasy XIV. I've used it for Diablo 3. I'm using it currently for Ark Survival Evolved. And then anytime that I'm using an FPS, I can just pop it off. I can put on a different plate where it's just got 2 mouse buttons and a rubber grip, and I can do what I normally do, which is put my melee and my grenade right there on the side mouse. And if I played any MOBAs like Dota 2 or anything like that, there's another faceplate that's just in a circular motion that has 7 buttons. And this thing works great. It's clicky, it's got chroma in it, so if you have Razer Synapse and you like to take your RGB and you like to put it all together so you have a nice color scheme setup, then it works flawlessly. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I can actually just scoot this over and then bring this out, is this is the current mic that we use on my wife's computer. This is what we use for all of our streaming, and this is what she uses for her filming audio as well. I'm going to kind of angle it so that you can see it. This is the HyperX quadcast microphone. This one just has a red LED in it. It does come with this pretty decent shock mount here. It is USB controlled, so we've just got a USB plug here in the back, and then it's just routed straight to the computer. There's a couple of unique features on here. The first one is your volume controls just right here. It's a little spin dial. So if we do that, you can kind of hear it turn up. And then the other thing is that you can actually switch your polarity patterns. And what that means is right here, there's some switches in the back. Right now I have it direct, so you can hear me just into the front. If we switch it to over here, it now becomes a bi polarity. So it actually comes in through here, and it comes in through here. We switch it here, let's say that we're in a room sitting with a whole bunch of people. This is a full 360 pickup on the polarity, which means that I can angle it from any position and you can hear anybody who's talking to it. And then the next step here is just a left-right. It means that it's here, and it comes in as stereo. Obviously, I like to keep it right here. That being said, one of the biggest features that we do use on this is that you can mute it just by touch. So right here, let's scoot this back. Muted. And as you can see when I do here and I flip it, the light turns off, which lets you know that it's muted. There's been plenty of times where our daughters come in or an emergency has happened, and you know, sometimes you just need to hit that mic and then go run off. All right, let's move that back. There we go. Okay. So something else that I would like to talk about. Let's go ahead and take this, put you away. And put you on. Hi, it's me again. Is the Razer Kiyo webcam. I'm gonna bring up this webcam. Specifically, it's made by Razer, so it works with Synapse. It is nice because it has a unique ring light feature on it, but I'm actually gonna do a side-by-side. So right now, what I am on is I'm on a Canon 90D DSLR live stream. This is probably $1,000 setup. And I'm gonna switch over to the Web Nexi. That's this one right here. Now, the brightness is a little bit lower. I have not dialed in any of the settings. I do have the ring light on, as you can see, but I am getting a full either 30 to 60 FPS. I'm not sure what it defaults to. However, the picture quality of it is really good. The fact that I have a bunch of bright lights behind me, and I have a little bit of uplighting right here, it still goes to show you that this is probably one of the better mid-tier webcams. I believe that this is 75. Yeah, it's $75.99. So right now, that's probably a little bit less than what Logitech C920s are, and those are really popular as well. I have a couple of those. Now the difference between the two, I do have settings that I can mess around in Synapse, but if I just plug it in like I'm using in Streamlabs, I can just go ahead and right click it, hit properties, and we can configure what the FPS is. So right now I'm doing 1080p 30. Now there it is. Okay, if I want to go down to 60, we could just go down here, hit 720, pop on to 60, and now we can do things like this without any motion blur. I get a little bit more room, so now you can see all of the stuff over here that I've not cleaned and been trying to hide. However, most of the time when you're streaming, 60 FPS is where you're at, but 720 is also kind of where you go, you know. That being said, I think that I might like the 1080p just a little bit more. Let's swap back to it. It's gonna blow up when I do it. Ready? 1080p, 30, done. And there's the brightness for you. Well, that's a lot better. I guess you can see in the room a little bit more. It is pretty bright in here. So, that being said, this is a really good webcam. I can turn this ring light off. It does make a little bit of a difference. Gets rid of some of the shine on my face, but if you're in a dark setting, having that uplight, if I didn't have these lights on, it would probably be incredibly helpful. Okay. Let's make these go away now. And then, like I said, for reference, here's the DSLR. Here's the drop down again. Okay. All right, well, I think that's where I'm going to head out, but if you've enjoyed hanging out, go ahead and check out some of the stuff in the cart, give me a follow, and we will see you next time.